The overlooked canvas, the rhythmic click of Priya Kapoor's handloom was the only sound in her small apartment as morning light filtered through gauzy curtains. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, weaving threads of indigo and gold into what would become a wall hanging for a local cafe. Outside her window, Mumbai roared to life, but in her space there was only the gentle creation of something beautiful. Her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. Vikram's name flashed on the screen. She sighed, already anticipating the conversation. "I can't make it to your exhibition," he said without preamble. "Sharma's hosting a networking event at his penthouse. People who matter will be there." Priya's shoulders slumped. "This exhibition took me months to prepare for. I told you how important it is." "Important to whom?" Vikram's laugh was sharp. "A dozen people buying scarves? Meanwhile, I could meet investors who deal in millions. Be practical, Priya." The familiar ache settled in her chest. 3 years together, and Vikram still didn't understand that her textile art wasn't just a hobby. It was her heritage, her passion, her voice. "You know what your problem is?" he continued. "You're stuck in some romantic notion that these handmade things matter in today's world. Wake up. Nobody cares about hand-dyed fabrics when they can get machine-made ones for 1/10 of the price." "That's not true," she said quietly. "There are people who value craftsmanship, who understand the story behind each piece. Not enough to build a real business." His voice softened, taking on the patronizing tone she'd grown to dread. "Look, I care about you. That's why I push you to think bigger. You could design for production houses, build a proper brand, but you insist on this quaint little operation." After they hung up, Priya returned to her loom, but her rhythm was broken. Vikram's words echoed in her head as they had for months. According to him, she was too traditional, too small-minded, too simple. The exhibition that weekend was modest but beautiful. Priya had transformed the community center with her textiles, scarves that captured sunset hues, wall hangings depicting urban landscapes through abstract patterns, and cushion covers embroidered with stories from her grandmother's village. Vikram arrived an hour late, accompanied by his colleague, Natasha, whose designer dress probably cost more than all of Priya's inventory combined. "This is cute," Natasha said, fingering a silk scarf with an expression that suggested she found it anything but. "Very ethnic." Vikram barely glanced at the displays. "See what I mean? It's all very nice, but where's the scalability?" As the evening wore on, Priya sold several pieces and collected business cards from boutique owners interested in her work. But Vikram spent the entire time on his phone, or introducing Natasha to the few guests he deemed important. When they were alone at the end of the night, Vikram delivered the final blow. "I think we need to reconsider our relationship," he said, straightening his Italian silk tie. "We're moving in different directions. I'm aiming for the top and you're content with this." He gestured around the room. "This is who I am," Priya said softly, a strange calm washing over her. "I create things with my hands. I believe in preserving traditional techniques. I find joy in simple beauty." "And that's fine for some people," Vikram replied with a pitying smile. "But I need someone who understands ambition." 2 weeks later, Priya saw photos on social media. Vikram and Natasha at the gala she'd heard so much about. The caption read, "Moving up with the right partner." She shut her laptop and turned back to her loom. There, at least, every thread had its purpose, every color its place. There she could create something true. Threads of chance. 6 months after Vikram's departure, Priya's small textile studio had undergone a subtle transformation. What was once a hobbyist's corner now occupied the entire apartment, with organized shelves of colored yarns, natural dyes, and a dedicated photography space for her online store. Her hands bore the marks of her craft, indigo-stained fingertips and slight calluses from working the loom, badges she wore with quiet pride. Her online shop, Woven Stories, had gained a modest following, particularly among sustainable fashion enthusiasts and interior designers seeking authentic pieces. Yet financial stability remained elusive. Each month, a careful balancing act between rent, materials, and savings. "Your work captures something essential that's missing in mass production," read an email that arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. "I represent Calacar Foundation, which supports traditional artisans. We'd like to discuss potential collaboration." The message was signed simply A Meta Director. Priya researched the foundation, a legitimate organization that funded artisans across India, though information about its founder remained surprisingly scarce. After a brief exchange, they arranged to meet at a small tea house near her studio. Priya arrived early, dressed in a hand-woven cotton kurta of her own design. She expected someone in formal business attire, perhaps with assistants in tow. Instead, a man entered alone, wearing a simple linen shirt and jeans. He might have been in his mid-30s, with thoughtful eyes and an unassuming presence that somehow commanded attention despite his casual demeanor. "Arjun Mehta," he said with a gentle smile, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting me." "I was expecting someone more." Priya gestured vaguely. "Corporate?" His laugh was warm. "I find formality often gets in the way of genuine conversation." Over masala chai, Arjun explained that Calacar Foundation was looking to create a collection showcasing India's textile traditions with contemporary applications. What struck Priya wasn't just the business opportunity, but how knowledgeable. He was about weaving techniques, asking detailed questions about her khadi work and natural dyeing process. "Most investors just care about marketability," Priya noted cautiously, still wary from her experience with Vikram. "I'm not most investors," Arjun replied. "The foundation values authenticity over commercial appeal, though I believe the two aren't mutually exclusive." He spoke of his grandmother, who had been a weaver in a small village in Gujarat. "She could tell the origin of a textile just by touching it," he said with evident admiration. "That kind of connection to craft is becoming rare." By the end of their meeting, Arjun had offered Priya a grant to create a collection and promised exhibition space at their upcoming showcase. The terms were generous, creative freedom with practical support, exactly what she needed. "Why my work?" she asked finally. "There are more established artisans." Arjun considered her question seriously. "Your pieces tell stories without words. They honor tradition while speaking to contemporary life. That balance is uncommon." Over the following weeks, Priya received the promised funding and regular messages from Arjun, sometimes practical questions about her progress, other times articles or images he thought might inspire her work. Unlike Vikram's communications, which always carried undercurrents of judgment, Arjun's messages felt like conversations between equals. What Priya didn't know was that Arjun Mehta wasn't merely the director of a foundation. As the reclusive heir to the Meta Industries fortune, he controlled investments worth billions across technology, real estate, and sustainable development. After years of operating through layers of management and proxies, he had recently begun personally seeking out projects that aligned with his vision of preserving cultural heritage. While reviewing potential grant recipients, Arjun had spent hours on Priya's simple website, struck by the soul evident in each carefully crafted piece. Something about her work, perhaps its honesty or the delicate balance of tradition and innovation, had resonated with him in a way that the polished portfolios of more prominent designers hadn't. One evening, as Priya worked late finalizing designs for her collection, her phone chimed with a message from Arjun. "Would you mind if I stop by your studio tomorrow? Sometimes seeing the process helps me understand the finished piece better." She looked around her modest space, so different from the gleaming offices Vikram had always aspired to. For a moment, his voice echoed in her mind. This little operation will never impress anyone who matters. Priya took a deep breath and typed her reply. The door is open to anyone who truly wants to understand the work. She didn't realize then how that simple invitation would change everything, not just for her career, but for her heart. In his penthouse across the city, Arjun smiled at her response. For the first time in years, he looked forward to meeting someone without agenda or pretense, just the shared appreciation of bringing beauty into the world, one careful thread at a time. Weaving connections. The morning Arjun was scheduled to visit, Priya woke before dawn. She wasn't normally concerned with appearances. Her studio was a working space, not a showroom, but today she found herself tidying yarn baskets and arranging her works in progress with unusual care. At precisely 10 o'clock, a gentle knock announced his arrival. Arjun stood in the doorway with a brown paper package tucked under his arm and a thermos in hand. "I brought chai," he said with a slight smile, "and something else I thought might interest you." The studio filled with morning light as Priya guided him through her workspace. Unlike others who had visited, potential buyers who glanced around with polite interest or friends who saw only a hobby, Arjun observed with genuine curiosity. He asked questions about her grandmother's techniques, ran his fingers over the textured weaves, and listened intently as she explained the natural dyeing process. "These colors," he said, examining a half-finished wall hanging in shades of indigo and rust. "They have a depth you don't see in commercial pieces." "They're imperfect," Priya admitted. "Each batch of dye comes out slightly different." "That's not imperfection. It's character." His eyes met hers. "Mass production has conditioned us to value uniformity over uniqueness." After tea, Arjun unwrapped his package to reveal a textile fragment so old the edges had frayed to gossamer. The pattern, intricate flowers interwoven with geometric shapes, was faded but still vibrant. "This belonged to my grandmother," he explained. "Part of her wedding sari. The technique is dying out because it's too labor-intensive for commercial production." Priya cradled the fragment with reverence. "This is museum-worthy," she whispered. "Museums preserve, but they don't continue." "Traditions," Arjun replied. "I'd rather see these techniques living in contemporary work like yours." Their conversation flowed easily from textiles to philosophy, from the commercialization of art to the value of preserving cultural heritage. Hours passed unnoticed until Arjun's phone buzzed with meeting reminders. "I've taken too much of your time," he said apologetically. "Not at all." Priya realized she hadn't thought about Vikram once all day, a small victory. Before leaving, Arjun proposed a community project, teaching traditional weaving techniques to interested young people from underserved neighborhoods. The foundation would provide materials and space. Priya would develop the curriculum and lead workshops. "Why me?" she asked. "I'm not a teacher." "Because you understand that this isn't just about creating products. It's about passing down knowledge, stories, identity." The project launched the following month in a bright community space in Dharavi. What Priya had feared, that no one would be interested in such traditional crafts, proved unfounded. Students ranging from teenagers to elderly women filled the room, each bringing their own cultural perspectives to the loom. Arjun attended most sessions, arriving without fanfare and often staying to help clean up afterward. He never mentioned business or markets. Instead, he shared stories of artisans he'd met across the country and listened to the participants' family histories with genuine interest. On a particularly successful evening, after the students had left with their first completed pieces, Priya and Arjun remained behind, sitting amidst the looms in comfortable silence. "My ex would never understand any of this," Priya said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. "He thought success meant luxury brands and networking events." Arjun considered her words carefully. "There are many kinds of wealth," he said finally. "Some are displayed on balance sheets, others in the richness of human connection. He didn't pry further, and Priya found herself grateful for his restraint. Instead, they spoke of the students' progress and their plans for the upcoming exhibition. What neither acknowledged was the subtle shift in their relationship, how their meetings had grown longer, their conversations deeper, the space between them charged with unspoken possibility. Occasionally, Priya caught herself wondering about Arjun's life outside their shared project. He never mentioned family beyond his grandmother, rarely discussed his other work, and somehow managed to deflect personal questions without seeming evasive. She knew the foundation was well-funded, but Arjun's simple clothes and unassuming manner suggested a modest lifestyle. Meanwhile, Arjun found himself increasingly drawn to Priya's world, her unflinching authenticity, her dedication to craft, and the way she valued people for their character rather than their status. In her presence, he could be simply Arjun, not the Meta heir with endless responsibilities and expectations. One evening, as they walked together after a workshop, passing street vendors and bustling shops, Arjun stopped suddenly. "What is it?" Priya asked. He gestured to the vibrant street scene around them. "This is the first time in years I've walked through the city without thinking about anything else. No meetings, no investments, no obligations, just present." Priya smiled. "That's how I feel at the loom. Everything else falls away." They continued walking, their hands occasionally brushing, neither pulling away nor deliberately reaching for the other. It was a moment balanced on the edge of possibility, like a thread waiting to be woven into a larger pattern. Neither could have predicted how quickly that pattern would be tested, nor the complex design that fate had begun to create for them both. Pattern recognition. The morning everything changed began ordinarily enough. Priya was preparing materials for the afternoon workshop when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Kapoor, this is Zara from Mumbai Business Chronicle. We're doing a feature on entrepreneurs backed by high-profile investors. Would you comment on your partnership with Arjun Mehta?" Priya frowned. "There must be some confusion. I work with Arjun Mehta from Kalakar Foundation. He's the director, not a high-profile investor." A pause. "Ms. Kapoor, Arjun Mehta is the CEO of Mehta Global Ventures. His personal net worth exceeds $11 billion. He rarely works directly with grant recipients." The revelation left. Priya stunned. She thanked the journalist mechanically and ended the call, then immediately searched Arjun Mehta Billionaire online. Images appeared. Arjun in bespoke suits at economic forums, speaking at technology conferences, shaking hands with world leaders. The same thoughtful eyes, the same gentle expression, but in a context so far removed from the man who sat cross-legged on her studio floor discussing natural dyes. Her workshop that afternoon proceeded on autopilot, her mind replaying every interaction with Arjun, questioning his motives. Was she some kind of social experiment? A corporate social responsibility checkbox? Or worse? Was he like Vikram but operating on a grander scale, collecting interesting people as accessories? That evening, her phone lit up with a text from Arjun. "The exhibition space is confirmed for next month. Dinner to celebrate?" Priya stared at the message, anger and confusion churning within her. She typed, "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Finally, "I'm still the same person you've known these months. Can we talk in person?" They met at a quiet rooftop cafe, neutral territory. Arjun arrived without pretense, dressed in his usual simple attire, but Priya now recognized the quiet confidence that came from a lifetime of privilege. "I didn't lie to you," he began. "Omission is still deception," she countered. "You let me believe you were just a foundation director." "Because that's who I am with you," he said earnestly. "The rest, the companies, the wealth, that's circumstance, not identity." "Easy to say when you have both." Priya's voice trembled slightly. Do you know how hard I've worked for every small success? How many times I've been told my work isn't viable? Meanwhile, you play at being ordinary while holding power I can barely comprehend, Arjun flinched. I've never played at anything with you. In boardrooms, I'm defined by my family's legacy. With you, I'm just seen for myself. The sincerity in his eyes made her hesitate, but years of Vikram's manipulation had taught her caution. What am I to you, Arjun? A quaint story to tell at your next gala? The simple artisan who doesn't care about wealth? You're the most authentic person I've ever known, he said quietly. The only one who valued what I think, not what I own. Before Priya could respond, her phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced down and froze. A social media post from Vikram, a photo of him outside her community workshop captioned, "Reconnecting with old friends." Some people's work is finally getting the recognition it deserves. Problem? Arjun asked. My ex, she explained reluctantly. Suddenly interested now that the workshop has been featured in design magazines. Arjun's expression tightened almost, imperceptibly. The exhibition timing is fortunate, then. What do you mean? Success is the best response to those who doubted you. The following day, Vikram appeared at her studio unannounced, his designer suit as polished as his practiced smile. Priya, the place looks fantastic, he enthused, looking around with newly appreciative eyes. I always knew you had potential. Did you? Her voice was cool. I remember you calling it a cute hobby that would never sustain me. He waved dismissively. I was pushing you to think bigger, and look, it worked. I hear your exhibition is being sponsored by Kalakar Foundation. Very impressive connections. What do you want, Vikram? His smile turned calculating. I'm launching a lifestyle brand. Your aesthetic would be perfect for our home goods line. We could scale your designs, make them accessible to a wider market. It was exactly what he'd suggested when they were together, turning her handcrafted work into mass-produced items. The proposal that had once filled her with inadequacy now seemed hollow. My work isn't meant for mass production, she said firmly. The value is in the process, the individual attention to each piece. Vikram laughed. Still the idealist, but, think practically, this could be lucrative for both of us. Like you thought practically when you left me for someone more ambitious? The words escaped before she could stop them. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Business decisions shouldn't be personal. We've both moved on. As he outlined his proposal, Priya realized something profound. She no longer cared about his approval. The validation she had once craved from him seemed meaningless compared to the authentic connection she'd built with Arjun. Complicated as it now was. After Vikram left, promising to send a formal contract, Priya sat at her loom, fingers working rhythmically as she processed the day's events. The pattern emerging on her loom was perhaps her most complex yet, threads of different weights and textures creating a landscape that changed depending on how the light hit it. Like truth, she thought. Complex, multifaceted, revealed differently, depending on perspective. That night, she texted Arjun, I still have questions, but I'm ready to listen. The finished tapestry. The National Design Gallery buzzed with anticipation. Traditional threads, modern voices had become the most anticipated exhibition of the season, featuring work from artisans across India alongside Priya's centerpiece, collection. Fashion editors mingled with textile historians and sustainability advocates, while photographers captured the meticulously curated displays. In a quiet corner, Priya adjusted the lighting on her signature piece, a massive wall hanging, depicting urban and rural India in conversation, traditional motifs flowing into contemporary patterns. The past month had been a whirlwind of preparation, leaving little time to resolve the complex emotions surrounding Arjun's revelation. Their interactions had remained professional but tentative, each cautious not to disturb the fragile understanding they'd reached. Arjun had answered her questions with complete transparency about his wealth, his private approach to philanthropy, his genuine passion for preserving cultural crafts. Slowly, her sense of betrayal had given way to understanding, though a certain guardedness remained. "It's even more beautiful installed than in the studio," came Arjun's voice behind her. She turned to find him in a simple kurta. Hand-woven, she noted with a small smile, rather than the formal attire expected at such events. "Thank you for making this happen," she said genuinely. "For all the artisans, not just me." "You did the work," he replied. "I just provided space for it to be seen." A commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Vikram had arrived, accompanied by Natasha and several fashionably dressed associates. His eyes widened appreciatively as he took in the scale of the event and the prestigious attendees. "Your ex?" Arjun asked quietly, noting her expression. Priya nodded. "With his new, ambitious partner." "Ah," a hint of amusement touched Arjun's eyes. "I should greet them as the host." Before she could respond, he had moved toward the entrance, extending his hand to Vikram with perfect courtesy. Though she couldn't hear their conversation, she saw Vikram's expression shift from casual confidence to stunned recognition as he realized exactly who Arjun was. Throughout the evening, Priya found herself the center of attention, approached by boutique owners, museum curators, and design studios, interested in her techniques. The confidence with which she discussed her work surprised even herself. This wasn't the hesitant artist Vikram had known. This was a woman certain of her craft's value. Vikram eventually made his way to her, notably without Natasha. "Your work has certainly evolved," he said, glancing around at the admirers who had just left her side. "I'm impressed." "It hasn't changed," Priya replied calmly. "It's the same work you once called impractical. The difference is that now it's being seen by people who understand its worth." His smile tightened. "Speaking of worth, you never mentioned your connection to Arjun Mehta, one of India's wealthiest men, backing your little workshop. Quite a step up." The implied calculation in his tone, that she had somehow traded up from him to a richer man, might once have wounded her. Now it merely revealed his limited understanding of value. "Arjun supports my work because he believes in preserving traditional crafts, not because—" "Ladies and gentlemen," came the gallery director's voice over the sound system, "we welcome you to this landmark exhibition. Before we proceed with the formal tour, Mr. Mehta would like to say a few words." Arjun stepped onto the small platform, his presence commanding the room despite his unassuming manner. He spoke eloquently about India's textile heritage, the importance of sustainable craft practices, and the Foundation's mission to bridge traditional techniques with contemporary applications. "But tonight," he continued, "we celebrate not just craft, but heart, the soul that transforms mere threads into stories." His eyes found Priya's across the room. "When I first discovered Priya Kapoor's work, I was struck by its authenticity in a world increasingly defined by mass production and hollow luxury. What I couldn't have anticipated was how that same authenticity would extend to the artist herself." The room had gone completely silent, attendees sensing that this was more than a standard patron's speech. In a culture that often measures worth by price tags and status, Priya measures it by integrity, by connection to heritage, by the honesty of creating something true. Working alongside her these past months has transformed not just this foundation's approach to artisan support, but my own understanding of genuine value. Vikram shifted uncomfortably beside Priya, who stood transfixed. "Many people spend their lives chasing external validations of success," Arjun continued. "I know this because I've been surrounded by such people all my life. But true wealth lies in knowing yourself so completely that external validation becomes irrelevant. He gestured to the exhibition around them. Every piece here represents not just skill but conviction. Artists who have chosen authenticity over expedience, quality over quantity, meaning over market trends. His gaze returned to Priya, warm and unwavering. Some see simplicity as a limitation. I've come to understand it as the highest form of sophistication, to know exactly what matters and to honor it without compromise. The applause that followed was enthusiastic, but Priya barely heard it. In those words, she recognized not just appreciation for her work, but a profound understanding of her journey, from doubting her path in the face of Vikram's criticism to finding strength in her chosen values. As the formal program began, Arjun made his way back through the crowd to where she stood. Vikram had strategically positioned himself nearby, clearly hoping for an introduction to Arjun's business contacts. "Ms. Kapoor," Arjun said formally, though his eyes held familiar warmth, "would you do me the honor of leading the first tour? No one can explain these pieces more beautifully than their creator." "Of course," she replied, equally formal. As they moved away, Vikram stepped forward. "Mr. Mehta, I'm Vikram Sharma, CEO of Trend Lifestyle Brands. Perhaps we could discuss potential synergies." "Perhaps another time," Arjun interrupted politely but firmly. "Tonight is about celebrating artisans, not business opportunities." Throughout the evening, Priya guided groups through the exhibition, explaining techniques and sharing stories behind each piece. With each retelling, she felt more connected to her heritage, more certain of her path. Later, as the crowd thinned, she found Arjun in front of her central piece, studying it with quiet appreciation. "Thank you," she said simply, "not just for tonight, but for seeing value where others saw limitation." "I should be thanking you," he replied, "for reminding me why I started the foundation in the first place, to preserve what's real in a world that often settles for imitations." Across the gallery, Vikram watched them, finally understanding what he had failed to see, that true connection isn't built on ambition or status, but on shared values and mutual respect. As Arjun and Priya stood together before her woven landscape, their fingers intertwined naturally, completing a pattern that had been forming since their first meeting. Two people who had found in each other not what the world told them to want, but what their hearts recognized as genuine. In the soft gallery light, surrounded by the fruits of her labor and the promise of a relationship built on authentic appreciation, Priya realized she had created something far more valuable than success, as Vikram defined it. She had woven a life true to herself, with threads strong enough to withstand any judgment, colorful enough to inspire others, and intricate enough to tell a story worth living. The exhibition would end. The reviews would come and go. But this moment, this recognition of having chosen the right path despite doubt, would remain, woven permanently into the tapestry of her life.